Welcome to the Amnayalife Podcast. Today we will talk about how comparing yourself to naturally fluent friends can lead to deep frustration in your English journey. I'm your host, Jack Smith, and I'm here with Tsai Shu Fen, who has an incredible story to share about her English learning journey. Shu Fen, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Jack. I'm happy to share what I went through and what I learned.
I want to kick off with something that nobody really talks about. What happens when you put in years of effort, but the people around you, friends, classmates seem to pick up English almost effortlessly while you struggle just to keep up? How does that affect your confidence and motivation?
It really hurts, Jack. I remember always feeling 2 steps behind my best friend from college. She spoke English so naturally, like she was born with it. We'd be in a conversation and she'd jump in, joke around, or help the teacher. Meanwhile, I was terrified I'd mispronounce a word or sound silly. I started believing maybe something was wrong with me, like I was missing the English gene.
That hits hard. I think what's fascinating and difficult is that the comparison game can make you ignore all your progress because you're measuring yourself against someone else's strengths rather than your own growth.
Yes, I could only see what I didn't have. I forgot I'd started much later or that my background was different. I figured if I couldn't catch up to her, maybe I shouldn't even try.
What's powerful is that self-comparison doesn't just drain confidence, it creates shame, discouragement, and sometimes even makes you want to quit.
That's exactly how I felt. I started to avoid speaking situations, thinking, what's the point? I'll never sound like her.
The core message for today is, your English journey is not a competition. Comparing your beginning to someone else's middle just sets you up for frustration. The most important breakthrough comes when you let go of comparison and focus on consistent, imperfect progress.
I wish I'd known that earlier, Jack. I hope people listening realize how destructive comparison can be and that it's completely possible to break free from that mindset.
And you'll see from Shu Fen's story that once you stop comparing, you start actually moving forward and your relationship with English changes completely. Before we dive deeper into Shu Fen's story, I want to let you know if you're struggling with the same challenges we're talking about today, there's a free class I've created that breaks down the real reasons blocking your English fluency. You can find the link in the episode description. It's going to show you exactly how to remove these blocks. Okay, Shu Fen, let's get into your story.
Sounds good, Jack. So, let me set the scene. I started learning English late junior high school while many classmates were already fluent from childhood. In university, I majored in accounting. My roommate Emily seemed to switch between Chinese and English like it was nothing. She watched movies without subtitles, called hotels in English, even made foreign friends. I remember sitting at my desk, practicing pronunciation alone, listening to her laugh and chat in English across the room.
I can just picture that the internal divide of being surrounded by fluent people, but feeling like you're always on the outside looking in.
Yes, it was so real. The worst part was group projects. Emily would handle the English emails and presentations, while I just did the technical work in Chinese. Teachers praised her confidence, and after class, classmates would come to her for help. I wanted to contribute, but felt completely invisible whenever English was involved.
Here's what's interesting. The more you see others shine, the smaller you start to feel. That environment creates a story that maybe you're not the language type, even if it's just circumstance.
Exactly. My self-talk became so negative. Why is it easy for her and so hard for me? I compared everything: her accent, her vocabulary, even her laughter. If I made a mistake, I'd replay it for days, feeling embarrassed all over again.
The pain isn't just about language. It's about identity feeling not just behind, but somehow defective.
That's it. I started believing I'd never belong in English-speaking spaces and should just accept my place.
I think what's really happening underneath is you're looking for proof of belonging and finding disconnection because of impossible standards.
For sure. The more I compared myself, the more I almost wanted to disappear in those moments. It hit hardest during my first internship. I was at an international firm. Emily was there too. In our first team meeting, the manager asked for updates in English. She spoke smoothly and clearly. My turn came and my mind went blank. I managed maybe 2 short sentences, then stuttered and switched to Chinese. Later, I overheard colleagues chatting about how lucky Emily's team is. That crushed me.
What I see as a cycle, the more pressure you feel, the more likely you are to freeze. and the deeper the comparison rut becomes. Shame multiplies in silence.
That's exactly what happened. I went home and thought, I'll never be as good. Why do I even try? I started saying no to English tasks and stayed in my comfort zone.
This is a common spiral self-protection blocks learning, but can also deepen the sense of isolation and failure.
The turning point came after a project review, when my supervisor said, "You have good ideas, but we never hear your voice in English." That night, I cried. Then Emily came to my room, handed me tea, and said, "I struggled at first too. You only see the end, not all the practice and mistakes it took." That shocked me.
That's a huge moment. Suddenly, you're given permission to see the effort, the messy middle, not just the polished result.
Yes, I realized my comparison was unfair. I was only seeing her highlights, not the years of secret work or all the failed attempts.
You let go of the English gene myth and started looking at what you could control. This is the beginning of real agency.
Absolutely. I thought, if she can improve, maybe I can too if I'm brave enough to try. What I did differently was shift from competing toward collaborating. I started asking Emily for advice, joined her when she practiced presentations, and celebrated little improvements even when I still stuttered. I also joined an English conversation group that welcomed all levels without judgment.
That's so important. You created a support network and redefined success as progress, not perfection.
Yes. At first, it felt awkward. I was the slowest speaker, but everyone there had a story. Each week, I gained new words, a little confidence, and even made mistakes on purpose just to practice bouncing back.
That rewiring is powerful. The safe space for failure plus real human connection changes everything.
Exactly. Bit by bit, I became less afraid to speak up. The victories were small, asking a question, volunteering for a short role, but they felt huge.
Looking at your story, what was blocking you wasn't ability, it was the inner voice that said, you can never catch up. Once you challenged that, progress finally became possible.
Yes, I realized everyone's timeline is unique, and that natural fluency is usually just invisible hard work.
Taiwanese culture often emphasizes being the best, being behind feels shameful. But true learning comes from showing up, not ranking yourself against others.
That's right. Comparing less and practicing more became my new motto.
The mindset shift you made focusing on your journey, not someone else's finish line, is both difficult and essential.
It is. Now, I see comparison as a signpost. When I notice jealousy, I turn it into curiosity. What can I learn from them?
What makes that shift challenging is our instinct to judge progress by speed or talent. But sustainable growth is measured differently.
For me, it's about tiny wins each week, not big leaps. Before, if I froze in a meeting, I'd punish myself. Now, I pause, breathe, and try again. I let myself laugh at mistakes and move forward instead of quitting.
That reflects a growth mindset, seeing every attempt as a data point, not a verdict on who you are.
Exactly. The more I speak, the less scary it is. I trust myself to handle awkwardness now.
This comparison trap shows up everywhere in English learning. I see students miss out on opportunities just because of what others are doing, not because of what's actually in their control.
Yes, if you're listening and frustrated, know that those naturals probably struggle too. Be patient with your timeline.
The reason comparison is so toxic is because it blinds you to your progress. When you shift focus to your own incremental wins, learning gets faster and far more enjoyable.
My direct advice, if you must compare, let it inspire, not shame you. My first tip is set micro goals, things like introducing yourself or asking one question in English at every meeting. When you make the win tiny, you'll rack up progress quickly and start seeing improvement.
That's so useful because you build confidence and positive experiences instead of waiting until you feel ready.
Yes, and I started looking back each month to see how many small risks I took. That motivated me when I felt stuck.
You're tracking action, not just outcome, and that's how breakthroughs actually happen.
My second tip is find one peer who is just a little ahead of you, rather than always watching the best speaker. Practice with that person and notice what habits help them improve.
That's great because learning from a relatable model feels achievable, not overwhelming.
Exactly, and they're usually more supportive and willing to share their own struggles.
You'll develop together and both feel less alone on the journey.
My third tip, Whenever you notice envy, use it as fuel to ask, what's one thing I can do today to move forward? Redirect frustration into action, even a tiny step.
That transforms a negative cycle into a growth habit channeling comparison into practical progress.
After a while, your focus turns to celebrating what you accomplish, not just comparing.
Shufen, I'm so inspired by your journey. You went from hiding in comparison to showing up for yourself and connecting with others along the way.
Thank you, Jack. I hope listeners understand their worth isn't defined by someone else's fluency. Every step counts.
Absolutely. No matter your starting point, progress is possible when you drop the scoreboard and embrace your own story.
If we all celebrated growth instead of ranking, language learning would become encouraging, not stressful.
For everyone listening, trust your pace, acknowledge your effort, and practice consistently. English is a path, not a race.
Don't give up. As long as you move forward, you're winning.
Shufen, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story with us. I know our listeners are going to find so much value in what you've shared.
Thank you for having me, Jack. I hope my experience helps someone out there.
I'm sure it will. And to everyone listening, if you want to discover the real reasons that are blocking you from speaking English fluently, click the link in this episode to watch a free class that will show you how to remove these blocks.